Today we are joined by Preston Thorpe, who's currently incarcerated at Mountain View Correctional Facility in Charleston, Maine. How you doing, Preston?
Doing all right. How are you guys?
Did you just dox him, Jared?
I don't think so. This is right there on his website.
I'm just kidding. You were very specific. I liked it. It was good.
Well, I didn't want to just say Preston's in the clink, but that's what I was going to say. Like, do people still call it that? Is it the clink? I think that sounds
I don't know what
cool.
they call it these days, man.
Preston, what do people call where you are?
It's certainly not called that here.
Yeah.
Just kind of, they're locked up or they're put away. I don't know.
Yeah.
I think the clink is a little outdated.
Yeah, I think it's from like the 50s probably.
It's definitely 80s slang, 90s
do
slang,
that,
which is our era,
the
Jared.
clink. Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I think it sounds cool.
I'm cool with it. I mean, as a term.
Certainly not cool from the inside, maybe cooler from the outside if you're older. Regardless of what you call it, you're in a unique place, at least first time for us, right, Adam? We've interviewed somebody from inside.
Yeah, this is definitely a first.
And maybe even a surprise that it's possible. You know, like I wouldn't even expect, like you can podcast from inside a correctional facility. How did this all come together for you? Like, how are you able to do this from where you are?
Yeah. So, there are, I think, a few podcasts that are like put on from correctional facilities, but they're like the content is obviously a little bit more like niche. I think California has an ongoing one, but certainly like nothing like this where it, like appearing on like a normal podcast, at least none that are like sanctioned anyway, right? It's like you might see it where someone's interviewed from a phone that they're definitely not supposed to have, but
right.
Yeah. It's certainly a unique situation. There's definitely all kinds of backstory to that. Yeah. So I am, I have like first, I guess I would want to like put a disclaimer there that this is like not a common situation, like not a common occurrence. Like there is like internet access and laptops at main facilities, but this is like a very special occasion / circumstance with the access that I've been given in particular.
Yeah, like we had to ask permission, sign paperwork, etc. This has been in the works ever since we had a conversation with Glauber Costa from Terso, and he told us about you and how you have been contributing, from inside on open source, and such a cool story. Tell us a little bit of the story, how you ended up where you are. You're serving 10 years, or you're on your 10th year. Tell us the terms and kind of where you are in your term.
Yeah, so I'm currently in my 11th year, and definitely my last. I am approximately a couple months roughly away from release.
Nice.
To like home confinement, so I'll have to spend some amount of time with a curfew and an ankle monitor and all that. Yeah, so I came about being here. In high school, I was, just young and made stupid decisions and chose to get into drugs when, just being rebellious and ended up getting kind of like thrown out of my parents' house, but like in a manner that they definitely didn't expect. Like the results that happened, it was a really unfortunate kind of circumstance. I was a quite a computer geek, you would say, in high school, and I was really like deep into like the wares scene, like the torrent scene, wares scene type deal. And at the time, like it was kind of like before like what everyone probably knows is like the dark web and the kind of like, underground, internet black market that exists today. There was a version of that was around in the, pre 2010 era. And I had some proximity to that because I was involved in the torrent scene and the wares scene. Like there's, some like general kind of like it's adjacent. And that kind of access, unfortunately, like I think what would have what would have occurred in any other circumstance was like, I would have, you know, kicked out / ran away, right? I probably would have learned my lesson fairly quickly and been super broke, and it wouldn't have worked out. And I would have ended up, coming home and apologizing and turning my life around. And that was definitely their intention, but unfortunately, I became very involved in, I was using drugs and had, essentially ended up getting real deep into that particular scene, and like large amounts of money and 18-year-old, like 17, 18-year-old, like mentality is just like the worst possible combination. So I pretty much thought I was like untouchable and the man. And I ended up getting in, real deep into drug addiction and eventually into trouble. And I went to prison for the first time at 20 years old in 2013.
And so you said there's lots of money running around, so you're distributing as well. I mean, you had easy access to basically cheap drugs via the dark web and whatever scene you were part of there. And were you distributing? I assume you were, because you got to get the money somehow, right?
Yeah. Unfortunately, that was the case. Like, these things are available, like right from source countries in, ridiculous low, like wholesale prices.
Right.
And it just, it felt like the movies when you ever seen like Blow.
Yeah.
And there's just like, it was like, it certainly felt like a version of that. It was a very unique time when, certain things hadn't been scheduled yet. Like the DEA hadn't scheduled certain things. So they were just freely available on the clear web from distributors. And they weren't like, they weren't illegal. Obviously some of these things, right? Some of them are. I'm not like, was certainly not breaking the law, right? But it definitely made the price and availability pretty low. It kind of just took a life of its own. The ego, like the money, the feeling of, of like the fact that I didn't, come home and apologize. And I kind of felt like it was like, like I figured it out. Like I had some kind of cheat code to life. And the whole time I'm just like, consuming like tons of drugs and not feeling like a drug addict because, I'm obviously not like the kind of typical what you see, like broke and struggling for their next hit. It was just, it was a never ending supply of everything. So it just, it all contributed to just making it worse and worse because I wasn't like self-aware of it. It was a bad deal. And surprise, 20 years old, ended up getting caught with a pretty substantial package of like ecstasy in the mail from Vancouver and got a 4 to 10 year prison sentence.
It would just like ship to your house basically, like from a different country. Like how do they actually, is this common? Just goes through the postal system like that or what?
Yeah. So at the time, it was not common. And that's kind of like what I say, like it was a very unique time in history. Like now there's like rap songs about it. It's like frequently mentioned in like hip hop, like, and it's pretty widely known that this is a thing. Back then it wasn't like, it's certainly like happened, but it was not something that anyone was aware of. And or at least not nearly to the degree that it is now. And that just kind of further, enhanced the feeling of like, that like I was just going to get away with this forever. And it was just like, it was a bad scene.
I think it's wild how much, I think even today, Jared, a lot of drugs flow through the U.S. postal system because I don't know firsthand, so I can't say that. But I know that I know people who boast about things even to this day. And it might not be a large quantity of what you described, Preston, but it's something similar and smaller or whatever. But like, I've heard of people talk about moving these things just to friends, like that kind of thing in passing, let's just say. Do not interrogate my friend group. I'm just kidding. I'm not even around these people anymore. Actually, I keep my distance. It's so wild because I think that, and you probably can share some of this, Jared, maybe not so much in detail, but I think in adolescence, in that time frame in our lives, it's already natural to feel some version of superhuman, some version of invincible, immortal, like the end and death and suffering and loss will never come. This is somebody else's life. These, I will never get caught because that's just not what happens. I'm untouchable in some way, shape, or form just because, you're in that adolescence spectrum. And you couple that with, somehow being able to find access to this stuff. And I imagine, like, we know that drugs alter your chemical state in your brain. We understand that, even before this age group that you're in, your frontal lobe isn't fully formed. They say it's, fully cooked until 25 roughly. So you don't even have, a lot of your frontal lobe rationale kicking in like it would later in life to say, oh, hey, Preston, this is a bad choice, or hey, this is a dangerous situation. In those scenarios, it's almost as if your brain can't tell you there's danger or can't tell you these things. Now, that's not the truth for everybody. There's varying degrees of spectrums to that. But man, what a situation to be in, to be in that era and have that kind of access and then go down the road you've gone. But in the end, though, you're in a place where I don't want to glorify your story in any way that you don't want to glorify your story. So I don't know the full amount of it, but there has been an ability for you to recover in some way, shape, or form and to give back. And I think that's the uniquely wild, free thing that is called open source software and even software development. That free in the fact that if you have a text editor or a terminal or access to a computer in some way, shape, or form, you could probably find a way to hack around and poke around and get curious and discover things. And the fact that open source is available to you to make that connection, Jared, you mentioned Glauber Costa from Terso and the things they're doing there, being able to contribute to, I would say, a high value open source project. That to me is wild, to go down the road you've gone, but then also to come back in a way to be able to contribute. How does that make you, knowing your story and you live this every day and this is your reality, not ours? How does that make you feel, that fact? How does that make you feel?
Yeah, it's honestly amazing. And I feel like there's this kind of, I go back and forth between feeling like this isn't real, like this day that, like that I live now, and like the career that I have and the things I'm able to do, the access that I have. I go, like, half the time I feel like, wow, like this is unreal, because compared to 2 years ago, let alone 5 years ago, it's just it's a completely different life. It's like, I never in a million years would I ever have guessed that this would be possible from a medium security facility. And then the other half of the time, I look at my past life and I remember things like the things that we're talking about, and I think, like, that isn't real. Like, that happened to someone else. Like, I was kind of like recollecting about some stories with this kid that's been pretty much my best friend for 15 years, and like thinking about these actual like vivid memories, like, was the craziest. It doesn't feel like it happened to me because it's so far away from the person I am now, and honestly the person I was raised. Like, I grew up in a good household. I got brothers and sisters. I have a sister and 3 brothers, and my parents are together, still together to this day. Great people, and I grew up a good kid, and so it gives me even less like excuse, right? Like I knew what I was doing was wrong, so that's like, first and foremost, I was like young and stupid, but I also was like super aware that of the consequences of my actions. The person that I was for those years, like, is so far from who I am now that it doesn't. There's like no sane reality where the person I am today is making it. It's like unbelievable that I just didn't care about anything. It's just I don't know, created this messed up kind of identity and like world for myself, and just went with it, accepted it completely, and just it got is out of control.
So you said you got 4 to 10 years and you're on year 11. Was there a second thing, or was it extended, or?
Yep. No, there's certainly quite a bit more there. So I get out after serving 3 of the 4. So when I say 4 to 10, in the way the New Hampshire system works, is you have a minimum and a maximum. You serve every day of your minimum, pretty much. So I had a 4 to 10, got a year suspended. There's a clause for doing drug treatment and not having dirty urine disciplinary tickets. So, so released after age 23, and after 3 years, and my parents had moved back to Michigan, where they're originally from. So this prison sentence I did was in the state of New Hampshire, and the time that I spent in prison, this was my first time in prison. It was the first time ever getting arrested, and honestly, it was there's you're young and you're like really impressionable, and the people that I was surrounded with in prison were very different from the people that I was surrounded by on the street. And there's like a certain kind of like novelty to prison, especially when you're like in that lifestyle. Pretty much everyone has pretty much been to prison. Prison's it's like a rite of passage type thing. And I just like continued making all the wrong decisions and just like seeking out and surrounding myself with just the wrong kind of people, and continue to do the same stuff, and just in a different environment. And
right. Got busted again and went back in.
Yeah, no, like so even still like in prison, and when I was released, I had the opportunity to move to Michigan with my family. So I was released with, I had no like identification. I had no like social security card, birth certificate. I had like nothing, no money. And like one of my like old friends like brought gave me like an old iPhone, and it was just like a rough situation. And I had a 2-week stay at a rooming house in the city of Manchester. This particular rooming house is notorious, like to this day. There's like, overdoses every day. There was parole officers and cops like walking around this rooming house. And that was like my kind of first, like, I was released and like went there to like get my room. You need like an address to make parole, right? So just to get out, I had to, one of my buddies like got me that room.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just like a major, like, it was not a good scene. So I didn't transfer my parole to Michigan. I told myself it was because it takes like a couple months for the transfer to go through, and I wanted to get out immediately, right? And in reality, I think it was me just, in the back of my mind, just giving myself an out. Like if because going back home would have been a guarantee that I have to like abide by their rules and do the right thing and try to get a job. And when you're used to the kinds of money that I experienced at a young age, like the thought of making, minimum wage or $10 an hour or, even $50 an hour was just not like, so I was just making excuses for myself and, very, very easily like justified getting, involved in the same stuff. And the time that I spent out in 2016, I was released in March, and by Christmas Eve, I was arrested again. That is the case that I just finished. And then was on bail and was arrested again in May of 2017. And I've been in since May 5th of 2017.
As you tell that story, it breaks my heart because my oldest son was born in March of the year that you were arrested, 2016. And he's 9. And I see his life. And I just think like, gosh, man, these choices that people make, and I don't want to like downplay because this is your story. I'm not trying to be negative, but it's just super sad to hear because I see the life my son has, and obviously he's born, so he's not your age, but I see I see all the new goodness. I see all the things we've done in our lives as a father and as a son for him. And I just think like what you've been doing since that same time frame, I know what we did for Christmas that year. It was his first Christmas kind of thing. So I know these are like dates burned in my brain because of my relationship, and it just breaks my heart for you.
Yeah, no, it's definitely no joke. I think these things are very commonly portrayed in media, music, television as being like, very different from the reality that I've seen personally. I've seen quite a bit of it. Yeah, I haven't had a Christmas on the street since 2012 was the last Christmas that I was free. This life will get you nowhere. I don't think I haven't seen a single person succeed. Like I haven't met one person that, met a lot of very, very successful people in that life, but none of them got to enjoy any, like you might get a few years here or there, but it never works out. Never. But yeah, so after I came in on this sentence, I was originally sentenced to 15 to 30 years, and receiving a sentence like that was like super devastating. And I was particularly bad into the drugs before I came in on this sentence. I had kind of prior to this last, 2016, my drug use was not, like it was bad, right? But like it wasn't as bad as it was this previous time. And, so my head was just not in the right place. I kind of, any hope I did have for a life was now just completely not like over, right? Like I didn't have much hope to begin with. So there wasn't a lot there to lose, but yeah, I pretty much, gave up and had really accepted the identity, of who I was at that time. That was like, I really believed that that's like, these are the decisions I made and I'm paying for them now. And this is the person I am. And I'm going to, like, it's like, it's just something that, I accepted that identity. And that's something that really like bothers me today, being a completely different person, going back and thinking like, man, like, why when was it that I decided that I was okay with being someone that I clearly wasn't and doing things that, and that's what ended up happening. So I came in 2017, was in the New Hampshire system for a couple years. And the case that I came in on was a very high profile case. And I had already been to that prison system before, so I knew everyone. It's a very small system, and like my name was a frequently brought up name, in the system, and the things that I was involved with it. Yeah, I was making some poor decisions. I don't want to elaborate too much, but it ended up getting me on the list for an interstate transfer. Right, they just want to get you out of the system completely, and one of the luckiest things that have ever happened to me, because I had court dates remaining on that sentence. You can only get sent within the New England states. So because they were going to have to transport me back for my sentence review board, and so I had some scheduled court dates, and I was scheduled to go to Massachusetts, and I was actually excited about that. I have a lot of friends down in the Massachusetts system. That is what I thought that I wanted. That was the one I would have picked if you would have given me the choice. And I actually went out for a very minor surgery. And when Massachusetts came to pick me up, or they called or whatever, and learned that I was in the infirmary, after this surgery, they actually denied my transfer, after previously accepting it. And I had a bed there and everything. New Hampshire had already accepted the inmate they were going to swap with me. So it was pretty set in stone. So by just a sheer miracle, they ended up denying me, and I thought I was going to sit. I had been sitting in solitary confinement this whole time. So it had been over a year at this point that I'd been in solitary confinement. Nothing, just the cell and books if you're lucky, for 13 or 14 months by this time. And and then one day they came and told me to pack up, and I was expecting it, but I thought it was going to take a bit longer. We ended up coming up to Maine, and it was certainly not. I didn't even think it was an option. I thought it was going to be Rhode Island or Connecticut. Those are the three. Massachusetts, Rhode Island, Connecticut are generally the three you would go to. I didn't know Maine was an option, and it was quite literally the best thing that's ever happened to me. Absolutely changed my life. The Maine system is very different from just about any other system. It's probably probably tied with Vermont for being the safest prison in the country. And it's just, it doesn't have a lot of the prison, it doesn't have as much of the mentality and the subculture and the gangs. It's not as prevalent, not nearly as prevalent. The New Hampshire system is certainly not, San Quentin, but there are units where that's very much the, how things work, and you're going to be exposed to that for sure. And Maine is very different, and not being around any of those people that I had been, by this point I'd done 6 years or more. And so not being around the people that I had been influenced by, and the people I felt like I had some kind of a reputation to uphold myself to, and just kind of being in a new place, and with a large sentence, and just kind of, you're kind of focused. You have no choice but to just focus on yourself, because there's nothing else to do. I didn't owe anyone there anything, right? I didn't owe anyone back home anything either, but it was just a feeling of like I was, this person, and I was like entitled to act this way and be this person in the other system. So Maine has a lot of like educational opportunities and a lot of, it's just a much nicer system. And I, after a couple years, kind of had an epiphany of like, at what point did I just decide that I was okay with this? Like, at what point did I decide that I was all right with being the person that I was? Like, when did I decide that I was okay, that I just am like in prison and I live in a cell and this is normal? Like, why is this normal, right? Like, why am I not spending my time trying to better myself and work on being the person that I'm going to be when I get out? Because I can't go back to what I was doing and who I was. And yeah, it was quite literally a single day. I vividly remember the day that I had this epiphany, and from there just started to make, that was the beginning.
And after this moment, did you just think to yourself, well, I like computers. I've been a computer guy since the start. This is ironically how you started, your life towards this place was through the wares scene and really being adept at using the internet. And you just decided, I'm going to pick up programming, or had you been programming all along? Like, tell us the technical side of your journey.
Yeah. So I had enrolled in college or had already enrolled in college by this point. And this was pre laptops. So the college, essentially you could apply for a Pell Grant, and there was some funding through Doris Buffett. And there was, I think the professors would come in and have like in-person classes, or maybe they do Zoom calls, but there was no laptops in the cell, with internet. So I had applied for college already, and while waiting is kind of when this all kind of occurred. And the first semester that I end up in college just so happened to be the first semester that laptops existed somewhat as they do today. And I had gone through a couple different, avenues in my head about what I'm going to do. And, I've always loved learning. I have spent thousands of hours. I read, hundreds and hundreds of books. Obviously, I've done a lot of time in segregation. So that's the main kind of thing you do. But I had studied organic chemistry. I had studied finance was the big one right before I ended up enrolling in school. I had learned everything that I could possibly consume, from getting books sent in to watching CNBC all day. And I was kind of obsessively learning about the markets and options trading, because I, figured that I could, day trade when I got out. And that was a potential kind of career path. And then when college started, I get the computer, and that was kind of epiphany number 2. And I was kind of realized wow, I have 4 years left. Where else does someone get 24 hours a day, right? Well, you got to sleep. So 14 hours a day, to learn something. I had programmed in high school, kind of before high school, nothing super crazy, like, LAMP kind of, PHP, like, I've had a Ubuntu Linux tattoo since 2009, right? So I was definitely, like I mentioned before, I was definitely a computer nerd.
Mm-hmm.
So I kind of had just enough context to understand and remember, like, if you're really, really good at programming, that's kind of all they care about, right? Like, if you know what I mean, like I definitely did some research and kind of found out that, like, criminal records or like college degrees or like any of that stuff is negotiable. Like, I think, I don't know what year it was, but like Google and Microsoft like did away with they don't even care if you have a degree, right? Because there's just self-taught people out there that are, spectacular.
Mm-hmm.
So that was epiphany number 2, when I was like, wow, if I were to spend 12 to 14 hours a day, every single day, for the remainder of my time, I could theoretically be pretty good at this. And hopefully by the time I, get out, might, be looking at the possibility of having like a promising career. And that was probably 1,000 days ago. And I have spent 12 to 14 hours a day, every single day since that day. That was pretty much exactly, roughly 1,000 days ago.
It's amazing. It's amazing to have that realization, make that choice. Sometimes people make a choice that's a sort of dream-like, I dream or I wish I can do this. And there's some people who make a choice and resolve to do it, and they commit to that resolve, and they show up every day and they do that. I mean, because sometimes boredom, even though you want to make change, can get a hold of you, because we're all human, no matter what our scenarios are. Sometimes we're like, I really want to be this amazing thing, and here's my pathway to do it, but you don't follow the steps to get there, and you've done that. That's wild that you've been able to do that.
Yeah, for sure. I think the environment definitely, I think it works well for this environment, right? The laptops, right, are issued for college, and the network is heavily filtered. So they're also, as far as like what the sites you're allowed to visit, it is for school, right? It's like, it's not for your entertainment.
Mm-hmm.
They allow like Spotify if you want to stream music or something, but like if the rules are essentially like, if you're watching YouTube videos like strictly for your entertainment, then that's like technically like against the rules, right? So that opportunity that I saw, when I got it, I was always very, very cautious of, there's no scenario where I'm losing this opportunity, right? Like, so definitely I would say that the environment of like, there's not a lot of distractions. It's kind of the ideal environment for someone that wants to spend 12 or 14 hours a day learning to do something. That it certainly helped.
Yeah, I saw some Reddit trolls who were, I think, reacting perhaps to the Primogen talking about you or something. Or maybe it was Terso. I don't know. And they were jokingly, of course, it's just a joke. It's not real, guys. But saying that this is like the best life hack ever. If you actually want to learn how to code, like, it's the best situation you could possibly be in. It's kind of true. I mean, obviously nobody would choose that. But once you're there, it has everything that it takes on. You have to still put the work in, like Adam talks about. But
yeah,
you are well positioned with a lot of free time and very few distractions, especially like you said, because these machines are specifically for education. What else are you going to do?
Yeah, I actually get that pretty frequently.
Do you? Yeah.
I have a lot of, so the blog posts that I wrote about my story, and then again, when the Primogen reacted to it on stream, the YouTube video, I have a lot of, it's been really cool. A lot of people reach out. Like, I get everyone from just like people just being supportive to like other people that have done like prison time, and that might be in tech. And then a lot, probably more than anything, is like college students that are maybe going for their CS degrees, and like asking like what the secret was, like what's the hack, like and I have been told more times than I can probably count that they are jealous of my situation, because they wish that they could just spend all that time and get really good at programming.
That's a wild thing to be told. I think what's wild, even potentially more wild to that, is that we all literally have a choice. You made a choice that changed your life. And those folks who envy you or are jealous of your scenario can also make a choice. They can turn out and tune out different things in their lives. The place they're in is a series of choices that got them to where they are. And we know that because you just shared your story, and it's a series of choices. And so while they have jealousy for you, they can do the same thing, not in the exact same scenario, but they can make the choice to tune out the rest of the world if they so choose. But wow, it is just so hard.
Yeah, definitely. And that's something that I keep in mind for sure. Like, I've never been much of a social media person. But like, I understand that like most people's, one of their primary like time killers / distractions is going to be social media. And, I'm going to be getting out fairly soon, regardless of what happens. Like, the worst case scenario is like a year. But either way, it's like, it's soon. And that's kind of like something that I've like resolved to keep, is if it's not difficult to give up like pleasures that you've like never really had. So, there's a long list of things that I've kind of told myself, like, I'm not going to like start this, right? Like, because I don't see a reason to like to change a whole lot, right? Like, the sites that I visit, what I do on the internet, the people I talk to, like, there's definitely a feeling of like, oh, like when I get out, there's no, you know what I mean? Like, there's no like barriers and rules, and like, but at the same time, I'm like, there's also not a whole lot that I care to do that I can't do now. I work at my my job for 8 hours, starting at like 8 or 8:30 in the morning, and I write open source software from 6 to 10:30 at night, and I work out before that, and but obviously I'll be spending time with my family and all the kind of like normal life stuff. But as far as how I spend my time on the internet, I'm probably going to stay pretty close to what I do now.
Yeah. Well, you've developed good habits, and so will be a real virtue for you to maintain those habits. I would add options trading to the list of things you should not get into when you get out, because your Robinhood account can also be an entertainment that turns into disaster. And I'm sure you'd like to avoid future disasters. I think your open source work is far more profitable and way less risky than trading options. But tell us about the open source. How long did it take you to get into? How did you get into it? What do you work on in the open, etc.?
Yeah, so I guess I could kind of start into like just like, I guess, like programming in general, in in here and how that started.
Sure.
So at the very beginning, there was there was internet access on the laptops, but it was only in the recreation building, like where the education department was. That's like where the Wi-Fi was. So you could, you could browse the internet in the rec building, in the education, hallways and stuff. But when you go back to the pod, you go back to your cell, there's no internet access. So it was like I would like save, Python like documentation, and especially back then, there was, it's like Windows Active Directory network, and you don't have any execution policy privilege. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the old AD Windows networks, but yeah, your execution policy is turned off, so you cannot like install anything. You can run like bundled, kind of like where all the libraries and stuff are bundled in the one application, the portable ones. But yeah, it was pretty painful. I had to like get a particular like kind of like terminal emulator that would, it was all kinds of, I had to use like a pip like proxy that was like from a .edu domain to be able to get like Python libraries and stuff.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, so after kind of jumping through these hoops, and at the same time kind of constantly bugging staff to install things, and like asking for like, hey, like I need Git, and I need, and like, and also like volunteering to help out with like, they don't exactly have a bunch of like full-time like IT staff, and this was like a new thing at the time. So I ended up like volunteering and eventually working for the education department at the prison I was at, and ended up helping out quite a bit, just like running the network. And eventually I think they just got like sick of me asking to install things, or, for like certain like privileges. I eventually like ended up getting that job, and being able to at least have like some level of like root access to my laptop. And that certainly made it like a lot easier.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, it was just like writing Python and C, and like wrote my own like kind of like C standard library type deal. I knew enough to know that I wanted to like start from like the bottom, and not like, just like learn like React or whatever. Like I think like the usual kind of like starting point, today would be considered like that pathway. Like I knew enough to know that I like, that's not what I wanted to do, that I wanted to start from like fundamentals. After some time, I'm in school, and I am working for the education department, maintaining the network, helping fix things, and like get laptops ready, and re-imaging, and kind of like doing like the daily maintenance. They started I can't even say they started, but people that were enrolled in college, that had graduated and got their bachelor's, there was a couple that were on their, and either in the process of getting their master's, or they were like going for their PhDs. And they had gotten like this like special permission to work, usually with the university that they were attending. One person was like a fellow, like he would like teach, essentially like I don't know, like substitute teacher. He was like teaching or whatever from over Zoom for the school. And there was, people were talking about like, oh, they might start allowing remote work. They were like playing around with that idea of like, hey, like if people can get jobs remotely, we might just like sanction it. So I actually was the only I was the only one that was not a master's student. And I put in a request to seek remote work after I'd probably been like learning to program at that point for probably like 6 months or so, maybe 7, 8 months. Really kind of completely out of touch with what I actually like needed to know, and like what was going to be expected of like someone. But like I just knew I wanted to look for work. Like I'm spending 12 hours a day, and I thought, why not? And they actually granted my application to, I put in like a special request or whatever to seek remote work, and it got granted. And in another brilliant stroke of luck, I ended up kind of cold messaging my like CEO now on LinkedIn. I had heard about the company from someone else that was on my pod that does work in like prison reform. Like he's like big into that kind of community criminal justice reform, prison reform stuff. And yeah, I just kind of got like a random like tip, and ended up getting on a Zoom call with my CEO, co-director now. And they honestly had no, like, probably shouldn't have hired me, like considering like the situation. But yeah, they like they gave me a shot. And that was pretty huge. That was a great opportunity. And while I was like doing open source stuff at the time, and I was like writing a lot of like Go and C and Python, and I was like learning like Rust at that point. Right around that time is when I got involved in ESA. That was right after EXA was deprecated. So that would have been my I would say like my primary like introduction to the open source community. I had certainly made contributions like to a few projects before that, but that was like the first like thing I would consider to be like being like active in a project. And I don't know if you guys are familiar with like the LS replacement command line.
Which one?
We are actually. We talked about it. When was that, Adam? With Nick Jantak?
Right, with Nick, yeah.
A couple years ago. Don't personally use it, but we are aware of it as like a LS on, I was going to say on steroids, but I don't know, on better.
On plus plus.
Yes, there you go. So you got involved with EXA and began contributing there?
Yep. It was like officially, EXA was deprecated because that was like in like Debian stable, like repo, it was like,
pretty mature then.
Yeah. Been around since 2015.
Mm-hmm.
And, yeah, the author like disappeared. I'm not even sure to this day, like if anyone's like heard from him. But guy like pretty much disappeared. Really unfortunate, like super talented, programmer. And, EXA was one of his, probably, I mean, his most like popular tool, like a couple other ones too. And, it being like deprecated ended up on like the front page of Hacker News. And I don't know, I think that was like at a stage when if I like found like some like issues that I felt like I could fix, it was like made my day. And I was like super excited to contribute to anything, and have like commits in any project was just like the most exciting thing for me. I actually ended up having to, so prior to like putting in to get remote work, I had put in a request like to the warden at the other facility to contribute to open source, because you're technically not supposed to like talk to anyone or have like any like comment on anything, like any kind of like, you're making no like post requests. It's like get
Gets
only.
only. Yeah. Was that a tough pitch or not so much?
Yeah, like it's hard when I think like I actually like I think I contributed to like micro, like the like text editor. It's like written in Go.
Really?
It's like a nano replacement. It's like actually pretty cool. But that was my first like commit. That was my first PR, open source PR. And that was like, must have been beginning of 23. Um, or yeah, I think so. It was beginning of 23. And, I like screenshotted the whole process and wrote this like big proposal and like put the screenshots in there of like, this is like what it is. This is the code I wrote. Like, this is like what it does, and tried to like give, administration like an idea of what I was going to be doing or whatever. And yeah, they approved that. That was really cool. And it's probably 3 or 4 months after that I put in to seek remote work. But yeah, the when I started at Unlock Labs, I had continued like, I work, right, like I mentioned, you know there was a period of time where I would work for Unlock Labs, like the 12 or 14 hours a day was all like spent on like work, um, because I was like determined to like prove that they made a good decision in hiring me, and there were certainly no other opportunities for me at that time. So I really wanted to like show gratitude like for the opportunity with them, and yeah, I had quite a bit to learn, but I pretty much always have continued to like either build stuff for the DOC, like for the education department, like either build tools for them or my own personal like open source projects, or yeah, just like other contributions.
I'd imagine it's like you got this new superpower that you never had before. Because skillless, I don't want to say you were literally had zero skills, but comparative to what you have now, skillless probably beforehand. You had some experience with LAMP. You've had some experience with obviously internet and different aspects of that, but like you've got this new superpower and you're like, I just want to contribute. I just want to be useful. I'm imagining this is what you're thinking because of your story that you just shared. You're like, where can I make a dent? Where can I put some good out in the world? I've been doing so much bad or so much internally bad thinking and so much negative self-talk about my identity. And I've had this epiphany and I got this new dream and I've got hope, and you've got, all this inertia towards it. And you've got this new skill that you're like, where can I put this skill to use? Where can I be useful? That's what I'm thinking. Is that a version of what you did?
Yeah, most definitely. With all the time, right? It was like if I had like a 20-minute conversation with someone like outside of my cell, I would feel guilty that I wasted 20 minutes, like because I felt like the 3 or so years that I had left like was such a finite amount of time that like any non-trivial amount of time spent doing anything but learning was considered to be like was definitely something I felt guilty about. And I think everyone kind of knows like how much like enthusiasm like newer developers have to like rewrite, whatever, and take on like features or projects that are like real ambitious that you kind of learn like aren't super realistic. So that ended up with like, I wrote like the first thing was just like an inventory system for like the education department to keep track of like all the laptops and the credentials and who had them and the condition and the allow list and just like, CRUD, that was the first thing that I built for the education department. Yeah, that worked out. That worked out pretty well. And then when I came here to this facility from I was just at a different main facility. I was at the Maine State Prison. Now I'm at, as you mentioned, Mountain View Correctional Facility, not Mountain View, California.
No, all the way on the other side of the country.
But yeah, when I came here, they have, believe it or not, actually the state of Maine, and from what I hear, most facilities, is probably something that viewers will be interested to learn, have quite a bit of like internally written software by residents. That's like actually a fairly common thing. And I definitely was not aware of this prior, but the Maine State Prison had a resident there that wrote pretty much all the software that it runs on, like to this day. So like all the count sheets, like the inventory for like the wood shop and the inventory for the kitchen, and they had like a system where you scan like a barcode in the back of your ID and you use that to like access your account to purchase things from like the commissary. So there was like quite a bit of this like hand rolled like infrastructure at the other facility, and the administration here was aware that existed. And when I came here, they had been made aware that like I was someone that could like replicate this, and definitely someone that could maintain some of this stuff here. So the system, the point of sale system that they use for the annex is written in, it's like VB.net. It's VBA. Yeah, it's definitely VBA because it runs on Access and Windows 8. So yeah, to this day, still maintain a point of sale written in VBA on Windows 8, which is the absolute bane of my existence. Yeah, so the staff here had, like, asked me to build a like real time like something to keep track of like what everyone's like position in the facility is. So when you come back to the unit, you like scan your ID and it will check you in to the unit, right? Because like currently you have to like sign out, and there's like people whose jobs it is pretty much to like maintain these like clipboards with everyone's current location, so that if something happens, they have to like count everyone. They have like record of like where everyone is, right? So they like wanted that built. Like, so yeah, I built that like RFID based like system, made that like pretty much like production ready. And that they pretty much abandoned like wanting to actually get it set up because I think they were just the guy who wrote all the previous software at the other facility ended up getting out, and now they're in a position where they don't have anyone to maintain it. And I think they're just trying to avoid that like happening here. But I'm actually pretty grateful that they had asked me to do that, because writing a like full production front, full stack like application definitely, I think, is being on the list of projects that that I completed like by myself. Like I definitely credit quite a bit of my ability today to that.
Mm-hmm. Is it a web app, or what kind of an app is it?
Yep, it is a web app. It was Actix back end and Solid.js front end. Just uses these actually, these right here. Of course, this is going to keep alerting me, but yeah, it's like RFID, like HID reader, and yeah, they spent quite a few. I would say probably at least a couple hundred hours on that.
So do you have to interface with the scanners themselves, or is there a way that you're getting the location data off the RFID?
Yeah, so it is just a. So I had the client runs in like a Towery window, and these particular RFID readers are keyboard input, like emulators. I had a client for this on a Raspberry Pi Pico that actually like interfaced with like the HID, because you have like administrator privileges to like open like dev, like you input and actually get like the raw bytes like from the OS, but the web app front end just had like an invisible like form, and because it ran in a Towery window, like allowed me to just capture all the keyboard input.
Using Towery, that's one thing I noticed about you, Preston, is you seem to be very on the tip of technology. Like if I on your about page, like, you know, big fan of Rust, obviously, NeoVim, Tmux, Ghosty, Alacrity. You're using Towery, you're using Solid.js. You just seem like you have a certain group of people who like to live on the edge. Do you know that about yourself? Do you realize that?
I would agree. I think there's I think some of it probably has to do with the fact that of just like when I like the time periods that, so it's like, so the last time I programmed anything was in like 2009.
Mm-hmm.
And then when I kind of came back to it, like, 2022 is when I started like learning again.
Yeah.
And I think that was like, maybe the peak of like the Rust like hype. If you were to see like a chart.
Right.
And yeah, I don't know. So it just seemed like the technologies that were real popular at that time period.
At that time.
It was a lot of like, it was kind of trippy because you kind of think you already have this like you have this like preconceived notion of like what people use and like how popular things are, and like you like don't, it's like I didn't like know that like PHP is like looked down upon now, and it's like kind of has like a reputation now. Like I was completely unaware of that like at the very beginning. And
it's because you're not on social media, Preston. That's where we talk about these things,
The only place really. Newsletters.
Yeah, newsletters,
podcasts,
YouTube. Although PHP is cool again, because
it is.
Laravel is cool. Taylor Otwell's cool. Making
Facebook
money on the internet's
cool.
Facebook? I don't know about Facebook.
I think it's actually kind of cool. I mean, it's kind of cool that Facebook still exists and that people can connect so well globally. That's pretty wild. I mean, I can stalk some people I went to high school with. That's a unique attribute in the world. I like that. I'm not doing it, but I like that I can.
You like the idea that you
if I want to check somebody out before I become one layer friend deeper, I can be like, well, this is who you associate with. These are your friend groups. This is where we overlap. That's pretty wild.
See, I do a different style. I look at someone's blog and I'm like, okay, you like Tmux, you like Ghosty, NeoVim. Hey, we can be
because you're talking to developers, Jared.
I'm like, Preston must be cool because we're both using Ghosty,
I do like that though a lot.
So you made a list of things you're not going to do when you get out. What about, do you have plans like what you are going to do? Because I mean, it's coming up, man.
Yeah, I think the primary thing is definitely make up for lost time with my family. That is definitely my dad's retired now, and to be able to hang out with him every day is definitely family is number one on that list for sure. And I've been fortunate enough to be able to so I purchased a house right across the street from where they live in Michigan. So the thought of fixing up the house and learning to do all the handy stuff that I never really learned. So yeah, it's at home projects, stuff like that is what I look forward to.
I'm waiting for the day that somebody writes the screenplay about your life. From Prison to Promised Land is a good ring to it, I think. Are you scared at all? Because, I mean, you said you valued this last 3 years with finite pressure and the fact that if you wasted 20 minutes talking to somebody, you're like, man, I did not adhere to my goal of total focus. Are you concerned at all? Or do you have anything that you're trying to do to sort of push back against the fact that you will have unfettered access to the world and distractions everywhere?
Not really something I'm super concerned about. I think I've kind of cemented my mindset and my goals and priorities now so much that I feel really confident. The main reason that I had a lot of that the guilt that I would have previously for wasting time that could have been spent learning was because previously had no future and no hope for a career and money, and so I definitely feel a lot more things are pretty concrete now as far as I know pretty much exactly what I want to do for a career. I've been really fortunate to meet some just awesome people in the industry. I've gotten a lot of support. So yeah, no, I feel pretty good about the future.
Any particular names you could drop that you can either thank or just mention that you've met that's stars or not stars or just influential to you personally?
Yeah, no, most definitely. I think super thankful for the company I work for giving me a chance at the time that I met them. I think pretty much none of this would have been possible, at least the way that it played out without them. Great group of people, great mission. Definitely everyone check out Unlocked Labs. If you haven't, we build education tools for incarcerated students, and generally try to bring internet access in a meaningful way to correctional facilities. I want to give. We're trying to give more people the opportunity that I was able to have, and to see other people given the chance to be able to change their lives. So definitely big thanks to Unlock Labs. Yeah, definitely big thanks as well to the whole Terso team, Glauber Costa specifically, is definitely the reason that a lot of this my story got picked up by Prime. Prime is absolutely on that list too. Primeagen has been the only source of entertainment that I've allowed myself all this time, and he's was a huge influence in the previously mentioned discussion about what technology I use and chose to learn. It's the reason that I use a tiling window manager and Tmux, and his story was one of the first that I found after kind of deciding to go down this route. Watching his From Meth to Netflix video was really inspirational. So definitely big thanks to the Primeagen for sure. And yeah, I guess I don't know how broad I'm being here, but I would feel horrible if I didn't mention my family has been by my side this whole time, and even when I definitely did not deserve it, they continued to support me, and they stuck around for all the years that I was insufferable. Just to like, they're great people, and super fortunate to have such a great family.
That's awesome. We all need people that pour into us. We realize, there's a lot of us that can pull our life up by our bootstraps kind of thing and just sort of muster through and get through whatever we have to, and the variations of that scenario can be very wide, obviously. But we definitely need other people in our human journey to get to where we're trying to go. And it's even better when you got sort of a peer, like from meth to Netflix, for example, something that you can say, wow, that I can emulate that. I can see now there's hope because there's somebody who's done it, a version of that, or similarity in some way, shape, or form that says this place I'm at is not the end. There is opportunity for, a new beginning, a new change, a new identity, a new future, and having those people pour into you. And the problem with Jim being able to watch him and being entertained by him, I'm entertained by him. It's pretty wild. I think it's awesome having that.
Yeah, and I definitely I certainly hope that people that are in situations maybe kind of similar to the one I was in can see what I've done and what I've gone through and think, it's really tough when your life is that far gone. You feel like you're so far away from just a normal life, or like the things you see other people have, careers and family, and you feel like that's so there's unreachable, that you're like that putting any effort in that direction is just feels feeble. And I definitely hope that people are able to look at kind of my experience and see just how far I was from any of this, and kind of get able to get some hope out of that.
I'm not sure how much further you want to go, Dre, but I'm kind of curious about your thoughts, Preston, on this reform idea. I think one of the things you said, either in this conversation or in your blog post, how you advocate for, you're an example of how access to education and betterment is an example of an inmate or somebody who's incarcerated changing. What does the world not know about your thoughts or advocacy of that we should know?
I think my main point there was there's a lot of people with similar mindsets to myself in different facilities that don't have any of the opportunities that they have here, that if given the chance, would flourish and would pursue these things and give themselves a way out. Because without this skill and without the network, right? I guess the skill is one thing, but without the ability to network and the ability to make other people aware of your story, it to be in a place with no ability to better yourself, and if all you're given is there's 4 phones on the wall and 200 gang members surrounding you, you could be even me right now, who's so far from any from having that mindset and being involved in that lifestyle. It's if you don't have the means to improve yourself, it's really difficult to expect different behavior. That's I think what I want people to consider is if your expectations are that incarcerating people are, it's a Department of Corrections, right? It's expected that you're going to learn your lesson and you're not going to do it again. And, but oftentimes the reality is you take someone that, maybe has far less exposure to some of the things they're going to be exposed to in prison. And, they spend a few years there and just, end up absorbing the criminal mindset and the negativity. And they have absolutely no resources to improve themselves. There's no access to meaningful education or any way to find a way out of like the hole that they dug for themselves. It's to then expect someone to get out and now have a criminal record and no work history for N years. Like, it's now just orders of magnitude more difficult to actually improve your situation than it was before this punishment. So when people, when the recidivism rate is like 70% of people return to prison after, I think, like 3 years, like, that the reason for that shouldn't be like a big surprise, right? Like, I think making people aware that like investing in education and investing in giving people opportunities to, improve themselves in ways to find like a career path and meaning, like that pays off significantly more. There's all kinds of statistics. I wish I was, good at kind of reciting these things. Like one of my coworkers is, shout out Jess, can tell you all the statistics about how every dollar spent on education, like, saves, N dollars in recidivism costs and all that. Horrible at remembering those things, but I think that's the general idea. I think people need to be given a way to, a way out.
Did you ever study the Stanford prison experiment? Either the movie, I don't think you probably have access to that, maybe, but the study of it, like it was based on a real study conducted in 1971. It was like a stark realization of normal people going into these scenarios and role playing, but becoming very real and very abusive and psychologically jacked up, I would just say, to paraphrase it. Are you familiar with that experiment?
I am actually familiar with it. I'm curious if the movie like shines any light on some of the details that have come out since then, where I like read that a lot of the participants like weren't really aware that, like, I think they were like encouraged to kind of like go farther than I don't know, like I know this is like out there because if you like do any amount of research like on it, you'll see that I don't know, people have come out and said like, yeah, like I was a part of that, but I like didn't know it was like, they kind of thought it was like a, more of like a game, like the I don't know, but that is something that I saw, and I'm just curious, did the movie play on that at all, or was it kind of still discussed like it was like a very serious thing?
I'm not deeply familiar with it. I did watch the film, and I know it's based on real scientific studies. I'm sorry, I got my child just busted in here. Get out of here, Micah. Trying to bother me. It was a study done, and it was a psychology professor who had done this, and I think he like canceled it after 6 days. It was serious. So to paraphrase the scenario, the film is based on this experiment, and the experiment was real. And the fact that they set up a mock prison, they took normal people in the world with their normal freedoms, probably in college is my assumption, or university, and they put them in this scenario where there was guards and prisoners basically, and the prisoners were not truly in prison. They weren't truly prisoners. Not that prisoners should be treated that way. No offense to you, Preston, but the scenario of like power, this struggle of power, where you're in a position of power and then you're in a position of lack of freedom and lack of power, and the utter role reversal. These people leaned into their roles. They leaned into all these things, and the prisoners had become prisoners, and the guards had literally become guards, and it got so real and abusive that even the professor was becoming abusive. And it's just such a stark reality. And the reason why I even bring this up is just to say that you'd mentioned before how you're advocating for more education access because this is a way to reform, mass incarceration. I think it's not the answer, but it may be one of the answers to some folks who are in prison, not so much all of them, but I can be wrong on that front. But it was just this realization that, wow, how in this scenario you are, you're likely abused. You're obviously, accessible to people with power and they can abuse that power. And that what happens when you lose that freedom and how it psychologically changes you, because these people that were, like I said, non-prisoners, term prisoners in this experiment had meltdowns, breakdowns, because they were being treated like people with no value, people with no hope, with, people that have been in scenarios you've been in, and it was not good. It was, the efficacy of the experiment was true. And it's evident that in scenarios where you are treated like you're worthless and hopeless, you become worthless and hopeless, and you do not act like normal you. You act like somebody who's been abused. And it's just if you haven't seen the film or looked at the study, I'd recommend just doing it after this podcast to sort of just have one more layer of understanding of Preston's life, or I'm sure a version of it.
Yeah, that's something that Maine has come very far in quite a few forefronts of like corrections, but one thing that they're big on is like little things like language, right? Like inmates here are referred to as residents, and it seems like such a I apologize, this people just can't. Yeah, so Maine has humanized residents quite a bit, and although the power dynamic is still obvious, and there's still there's always like going to be there's like a certain kind of person that is more drawn to roles like police officer, corrections officer, that like are more likely to seek out a position of power over someone, and like that is obviously still happens, but yeah, I think certainly not a negligible like portion of like why I had no hope or care about my life was certainly, I can absolutely imagine that some of it might have been from spending a third of my life locked up and treated like a number, and like you're not human, and that you're how you feel and your opinions and like just don't matter. And yeah, it's absolutely a real phenomenon for sure. I think most people would be surprised, and I would say probably 99% of people that have a loved one that ends up having to do time are absolutely shocked by some of the experiences that they'll have. And most people's reaction is always like, well, they can't do that. Like, and it's like, but like all of your whole like preconception of like your human rights and like your that's gone. Like there is none of that. And a lot of people are absolutely shocked by how the average person is treated. Like everything in your mind that kind of like makes up your like psyche of like, and your own like self-worth is challenged, because at any given point you can be told to, I'm like not going to go too far into some of the experiences I've had locked up just because I'm still here, but it certainly would shock most people.
Well, I'm sorry that you've had to go through that. I know that you've been down a road that has been troubling. I think maybe early on you may have been a threat to society just based on what you've shared about your choices. And who knows the lives that you've impacted as a result of your choices. But, I am a believer in redemption. And I'm so thankful that we live in a society where redemption is an opportunity and that you've been able to see and have that epiphany about your life, that your identity that you thought was accepted by you, pressed upon you, etc., was not going to be your long-term reality. And you put it into your mindset that you're going to change. And I'm glad that you were able to do that. I'm glad that something as simple as a computer and access to the internet and your previous curiosity into software and the fact that open source exists, and that in today's age, that if you can produce and you can be valuable, then that's all that's required to have access to the world, is a thing versus a degree or something else that you can find rehabilitation in your life and a flourishing future ahead of you, given, future choices that will be exemplary of what you've recently done. Keep making these good choices, keep making these choices that are about your future and the future you want to have versus the ones that you don't ever want to go back to. So I'm thankful for that for you.
I appreciate that.
Well, Preston, is there anything else on your mind, on your heart, or you were hoping us to ask you, which we haven't asked yet, that we could talk about before we let you go?
I think we definitely had to cover quite a bit. Yeah, I don't know. I think that about wraps it up, probably.
Well, we appreciate you arranging this, being willing to open up, tell your story, share with us. We're thankful for the freedoms that you do have inside there to hop on a podcast and turn your video on and connect to the internet and talk to the outside world. So thank you. And I guess thank the folks who are in charge there and giving you this amount of freedom until you get your real freedom back. Hopefully less than a year from now. But what'd you say, a year in the worst case?
Yeah, year in the worst case. May 5th of 26 would be the worst case scenario.
Would be the worst case. So less than a year.
Get that out of house next to your parents, make up for lost time, do some fixer-upper, make sure you video it and put it on the internet because you'll be famous when you do that. And all those good things, man. Good luck to you.
When you sell the rights to your movie, make sure you get good money.
That's right. Come back to me for the title.
Gotcha. I appreciate you guys having me.
You bet.
Yeah.